Our county schools investments are safe, strong, and sturdy. Since the vast majority of the Treasurer's investments continue to outperform, my comments will focus on the portion of our holdings that have been impacted the most by the recent turmoil in the credit markets, what are referred to as structured investment vehicles.
Mr. Street, what plan A is to hold to maturity? What's plan B?
Well, plan B is to, first of all, monitor. We've had good news on, as I said, 83% of those are on credit watch. We had a call this morning, and from what I heard from the rating agencies, although they want to make positive comment on our what's called whistle jacket, which of course is the only one that really is in question now. They were very confident, and they spoke highly that these reorganizations are moving forward, restructures, if you will. And what really was impressive is they actually said that these would not just trade and not be just rated at the bank's rating, for example, AA1 for Citigroup. If they were these type of structured organizations with greater asset quality, they'd actually trade at the bank rating AA1 plus a notch, which meant AAA.
Are the rating agencies culpable? Should they have been
the rating agencies are helpful, but their helpfulness is limited. I mean, they're going to look at historical, looking back in history, what's normal, what likely should we expect, and they will make their models off of that. So there's limitations there, and that's why more subjective analysis is helpful.
And then, as we move forward, would it be possible for the Treasurer's Office to segregate SIVs in their reports instead of keeping them in medium-term notes or keeping them in commercial paper sections of the pie chart? Could you actually segregate those out so we can kind of monitor them quickly at a glance from month to month?
I don't see that as a problem. I tried to pull that out in the September management report to kind of put that out there as SIVs, but absolutely.
Yeah, don't be afraid to put the content of that component, because I went back to the September report. It would have been nice if that had been in the Treasurer's letter as opposed to an attachment. You could have, that would have been a little more helpful as a reader of your report to put that puppy right in the transmittal letter. That's all I have, I think, on SIVs, other than Mr. Street. You made your last purchase of an SIV on July 30th, and then a week later you were at a conference from Trax, and you had Jeff Flynn here, the proprietor of that organization here in September. Yeah. And your talk was about what was happening in the fixed income marketplace as it related to certain debt structure and problems on the horizon, and you had problems with OSERs. Could you distinguish the difference between what you're facing and what you were discussing at the conference, or what you're concerned about at OSERs?
Well, I think that if everyone here knows I have concerns. I mean, my investment portfolio printout on a monthly basis is 45 pages. The investment portfolio printout of OSERs, 7,985 pages. There's a tremendous amount of commitment within OSERs to new instruments, credit default swaps, other kinds of issues that I don't know that I'm completely uncomfortable with. I just want to have a better understanding of how they'll play long term. Just as we've seen SIVs.
Listening to it, you have a team, and I'm going to, I guess, call the quarterback. If you're not there to call the plays, which is really what's before us today to decide, are there game plans there that go on with someone else who's a caretaker, or does all that get restructured and we start looking at, removing ourselves from some of these investment strategies and investment instruments? What happens if we were to, at this point in time, find another quarterback?
Well, I can only state the process that's in place today. I appreciated working with former Treasurer Morlock in a transition where I had a long time to really learn the structure of the organization. You just have to marvel at the quality and the dedication of the staff. As I said, 5 o'clock in the morning, one fellow drives 80 miles pretty tough to make it at 5 o'clock after driving 80 miles, but all of us are there early. All of us are dedicated here, and it's an integrated team.
Supervisor Campbell.
It's reported on one of the blogs this morning, Mr. Treasurer, Tax Collector, that your office was served with a subpoena by our district attorney. Can you tell us what was in that subpoena?
I don't know much about it. We received a subpoena. I think my understanding is that it was served in several places around the county. I think there's been a lot of issues in the press, perhaps about where Malcolm, or some other issues. I don't know what all the issues are. I just know we're asked for information. We get public records requests. We get the district attorney has looked at these issues. So I really don't know much more than that.
Well, the CEO has given us something in writing as it relates to what was the subpoena that was given the CEO in our IT department. What I'm asking is, did you receive a subpoena, and what did they ask for from you?
I received the subpoena on Friday. It was delivered to, I believe, Keith, are you here?
Keith, why don't you tell us what they asked for?
Yeah, it was delivered Friday afternoon, just before 5 o'clock.
Could you state your
I'm
name
sorry.
and
My name
position
is-
for the record, please, sir?
My apologies, Mr. Chair. My name is Keith Rodenice, and I'm an EA in the Treasurer's Office. To answer your question, yes, there was one delivered. It was delivered Friday afternoon, just before the close of business. It hasn't really been reviewed very thoroughly as of yet because we've been in preparation to come before you today. I know that the deadline and timeline for the documents that they have asked for to produce is towards the middle of January, so I think there should be ample time. But from my brief perusal of it, we were also asked for electronic documents and other documents, much of which we've already provided to the district attorney's office. So there'll be certainly some overlap as to what we've provided in the past and what they've asked for this time.
Did they specify?
We do have a very well-structured
Correct.
process in place. You are the final, call on all of that. But if you weren't there to do that, and again, we had a caretaker, there wouldn't be any drastic moves one way or the other from what we're currently doing. So it begs the question, removing you does what?
Well,
That doesn't change anything except public perception, which is unfortunately what we have to deal with given the misunderstandings of some of these investments and what they really mean, liquidity issues, what's really in one SIV compared to what Florida did, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we have to deal with and undo those perceptions, and we rest with your team in doing that.
Well, the facts are clear. These are strong investments, and we've seen the performance in the last 2 weeks, and bringing back on balance sheet. I believe I'm an integral part of this investment process. I think one of our strengths when, you hit a bump in the road is you see how it works out. It worked out extraordinarily well. We're a very good team, and I seek your vote today to keep that team in place.
Let me, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to lay out my thought process on this and make a recommendation to my colleagues. If it's all right with you. I think Supervisor Bates was right at the dichotomy we face. We either continue the delegation authority that this county uniquely has as a result of the bankruptcy to determine where the investments of its funds will be, whether with the treasurer or some other entity. By statute, we have that authority to do that. So we continue it with the treasurer's office where it has been placed for a number of years. Or we move it as we directed our CEO to come up with a plan about 6 weeks ago, which would allow the authority to be vested in the CEO/CFO. Now, in discussing it with you, Mr. CEO and CFO, the actual procedure would be to keep the same individuals who are doing the investments in their same unit, in their same location. So the issue is, who do they report to? The treasurer, Chris Street, or our CFO, Bob France? Nick Berardino is giving us a historical perspective that I think is extremely important. And that is, a previous board said, no problem. Not based on the board's great financial knowledge, but just because they were assured there was no problem. I don't want to be in that situation where I say no problem, because I do not have the capability to investigate each one of these structured investment vehicles, analyze the kinds of things you have here, and determine the risk of that. David Sundstrom says, though, that when he looks at the individual investments for the past almost 90 days by the Treasurer's Office, they have all been consistent with, except for one, of the policy statement that this board has approved. And that one was corrected in 1 day. So we internally have a way of monitoring investment procedures outside of the Treasurer's Office. And of course, the Treasurer's Office reports to us on a monthly basis and more frequently as needed. I think the issue to me is to try and create a checks and balances. I would like to have somebody independently looking at the risk posture of the Treasurer's investments. And that risk posture gets to the allocations. Now, frankly, the constraints we put on the Treasurer's Office, as I've seen them and discussed them with Supervisor Morlock, are very conservative constraints. But there is still an allocation of those funds within that, and we're up to 14% in something called a structured investment vehicle. There may be some in certain commercial paper, and commercial paper has become a question mark written about now. I'd like to ask that we have Bob France contract with somebody independent who looks at these and gives us an appraisal of the risk portfolio of the Treasurer's Office. So that's different than just, are you investing the way we tell you to? It's, what is the risk? We asked you 3 weeks ago, should we sell the structured investments? You said no, we take a loss, and from your appraisal at that time, I'd love to have somebody else tell me that separately who's not vested in the fact that he made the decision to buy. We're going to approve a similar thing for OSERS. Now, OSERS is a much more complicated, as you said, a vehicle, much longer life, at riskier investments, candidly. But I still think it's appropriate that we do that. So here's what I would propose. Specifically, my motion would be to continue the existing board-approved investment policy statement as amended. To do number 2, which is adopt the approving investment policy statement and delegating investment authority to the Treasurer's Office for calendar year 2008. 3, charge the CFO to retain outside financial advisory services to review the risk posture of the Treasurer's investment portfolio. That would be my motion.